Joining me, good to see you, Christine Lagarde, Managing Director of the IMF. My apologies, Madam Lagarde. Normally I would have been with you, but Brexit kept me in London this week. So it's probably a good place to start so we can dispense with it. Are you relieved that Brexit has now been delayed until October, or is this just building in even more uncertainty?
Well, Richard, there was an incredible sense of relief actually last night when we had the G20 dinner. Many of the finance ministers around the table were actually pleased that they did not have to prepare for some very difficult developments that they were feared today. So sense of relief first. Probably on a par with a sense of uncertainty that obviously has not subsided, given the additional time period that is given to the EU and the UK authorities to find an agreement, whatever that is. So it simply says that for a few more weeks and months, we're going to speculate as to what the outcome will be, and as far as we at the IMF are concerned, what the macroeconomic consequences will be in terms of the UK economy, but also the rest of the world.
The economic outlook, I mean, it's not depressingly gloomy generally around the world, but it is distressingly worrying. If I read the WIO and I listen to what Gita was saying, the risks, would you agree, seem to be firmly on the downside?
Yes, we agree that the risks are skewed to the downside. We have also revised slightly our forecast for this year. And if you look at growth last year, we had 3.6%. This year, we're forecasting 3.3% with a discount that is pretty much across the board, with advanced economies and emerging and developing countries equally dragging these numbers down. However, and that's where there's a little bit of hope, we anticipate a pickup in the second half of this year to go back to the 3.6% in 2020. But that is predicated on actually us collectively trying to fix the risks that have been created. And you've mentioned some of them. The big one is trade tensions that are being addressed, but not yet conclusively. The second one is related to geopolitics and to particular country events. Clearly, you are in one of the countries that is a big cloud on the horizon at the moment. And we are not, we are at the mercy of financial market movements as well, which would clearly have an impact on particularly capital flow movements, particularly to emerging market economies.
Yeah, and Managing Director, you're in the other country where when we talk about trade, there are the issues there. I mean, at the end of the day, the worsening trade relations, perhaps led by the US administration, it's not helping matters, would you agree?
No, the trade tensions are weighing on the forecast. They're weighing on the confidence of investors, because most people wonder what will be the terms under which they trade, they invest, and they organize their supply chain. Once they know, whatever the outcome, at least they can organize themselves. But for the moment, the fact that it's under threat, in the process of being negotiated, but yet not completely resolved, is a big question mark for them.
I noticed yesterday in your press conference, the weather was back, and you were quoting Mark Twain about the number of different types of weather. Well, I've got a quote, a Mark Twain quote for you in return. He, of course, said, don't put off until tomorrow what you can do the day after. And isn't that exactly the problem at the moment? Everybody's putting off, not till tomorrow, but until a week next Thursday.
I think there is a bit of that, Richard. The fact that when I said a year ago, when the sun is shining, fix the roof, some countries started the process, but there is plenty that needs to be done in order to really beef up the competitiveness and the productivity that particularly the advanced economies are lacking at the moment. So structural reforms absolutely need to be conducted with renewed vigor. And when it comes to the trade tensions, they really have to be addressed. The system needs fixing. There's no question about it. It needs to be improved. The WTO system needs improving and needs to be made more efficient so that trade is fair, is mutually beneficial for those in the trade. But action is really needed.
Are you at all worried that there seems to be a politicizing of the US Federal Reserve in terms of the two nominations or potential nominations for Fed governorships?
Well, first of all, we have to wait until the composition is final, and there is clearly a process of confirmation underway, so I will not comment on that particular point. But it's clearly important that all central banks, wherever they are located, be able to actually base their monetary policy decisions on data and verified data, not just impressions, and that also they communicate their decisions in clear enough a way so that investors actually understand where it's heading.
If we take a look at what happens next, the G20 has met, we'll have a G7 in the summer, the Brexit's put off. I wonder just what you can do to shake leaders, policymakers, and get this message through. They are tinkering at the edges rather than making the wholesale changes necessary.
You know, I strongly believe in the principle that self-interest is actually solidarity. And each and every country has an interest in improving its domestic policies in order to make sure that there is growth, that it is sustainable, and that it is inclusive. Those issues apply across the board, and they're critically important. I equally believe that cooperation is indispensable. We cannot deal with corruption. We cannot deal with climate change. We cannot deal with appropriate international corporate taxation in a world where most of services will be digital without strong cooperation amongst ourselves. And the same is true with trade. So they all have a vested interest in beefing up that international cooperation and taking at home the right measures so that people feel included and are not disenfranchised with the way things are going.
Finally, there's a new boss over the street. You have a new partner in the World Bank, President Malpass. Will you be lending him your umbrella?
Well, I certainly hope that we will be jointly working on our respective mission. We don't do the same things. Clearly, the World Bank is focusing on reducing poverty as much as it can, and we are focused on stability and prosperity. So we join hands in many instances. We work together on particular countries, and I'm just delighted that this partnership is going to be continued, renewed, and certainly reinforced. I'll do my best for that.